and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. It's our last Patreon-sponsored review for the year, guys, and it's our final weird follow-up. But then again, the thing it's following up was pretty weird, too. In 2015, we had a two-part episode looking at 3 issues of The Punisher. As I mentioned there, occasionally creators have decided to just do odd things with him, and those 3 issues were an example of that. In them, a medical procedure just happens to make the Punisher look like a black guy. What the hell they were trying to accomplish with that storyline is anyone's guess, and today we have another example of bizarreness for Frank Castle. One that Marvel really wants you to forget ever happened. Aside from the fact that the Wikipedia page for it talks more about various creators decrying it than it does the actual plot, Comixology doesn't have a digital copy of it as far as I could tell. And yet friggin' Frankencastle, the one where the Punisher gets turned into a Frankenstein monster, that is definitely available. People hate this book. Hell, the entire reason I was paid to cover this is because the patron hated it. Which probably says a lot when it's so hated someone will pay me to see it get eviscerated, while the company that actually produced it isn't interested in making money by selling it. So how did this thing come about? Well, for that, we need to talk about event comics. No. I mean the company Event Comics. Man, this industry is confusing. Event Comics was a publisher started by Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada in the mid-90s. They were the ones who printed Quesada's atrocious 22 Brides book, though it gained a lot of traction with some of its other characters like Ash and Painkiller Jane. In 1996, Marvel struck a deal with Image Comics that produced the much-lamented and lampooned Heroes Reborn idea, wherein Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee rebooted Captain America, the Avengers, Iron Man, and the Fantastic Four in their own little universe. Despite high sales and even Marvel's desire to keep it running, the books were not critically well received and eventually returned to Marvel. One of the problems, of course, being Rob Liefeld's chronic lateness on the titles he worked on. The idea of a different company working on these books other than Marvel itself is perplexing to say the least, especially given the lateness issue, but the thing is, Marvel decided to do it again with Event Comics. Then Marvel CEO Joe Calamari was at a party with Quesada and Palmiotti, the two suggesting to him that, much like the Image deal, they could farm out a few titles to Event Comics and help them revitalize the titles while Marvel was having its financial issues that were also causing so much creative upheaval. Unlike the Image deal, though, they wouldn't be given the bigger names like Captain America or the Avengers. No, they were given Black Panther, Daredevil, the Inhumans, and the Punisher. And thus the Marvel Knights imprint was made, with the two using their connections to indie creators to bring in fresh talent to work on them. The books thrived with these new creators. The success of Marvel Knights is really what put Quesada on the map for becoming editor-in-chief of Marvel, but one of the Marvel Knights books was a notable exception, The Punisher. The 4-issue miniseries was so hated by fans and creators alike that its only other major contribution to the Marvel Universe was a team-up miniseries with Wolverine, and the Marvel Knights Punisher book started over again in 2000 with Garth Ennis, who wrote off this entire thing in the last few pages of the first issue of his much more critically acclaimed run. But is this book really as terrible as it was made out to be? The premise is certainly questionable, but 20 years later, can we say that the thing was actually awful? Well, let's dig into The Punisher Purgatory and see for ourselves.
I've got you under my skin.
For For the sake of time, since we're covering 4 issues here, we'll forego the covers save for the broad note that I actually quite like them. The art style is moody and makes great use of minimal colors, most striking in issues 1 and 3. The first being just gorgeous in its simplicity, considering it's just Frank standing in a doorway while holding goofy-looking guns and having a weird symbol on his forehead, which we'll get to in a moment. And the latter having the very cool image of Frank Castle emerging from his own grave.
Rise from your grave.
We open on an alleyway in Brooklyn. A filthy alley like 1,000 others. But this one is special. There's slightly less urine soaking it than all the others. This is where he died. Well, if the fold-out advertisement is any indication, it was Chucky who killed him. Yeah, I should note that there's this weird fold-out page before the comic begins, presumably gives some history to Frank Castle, but it's odd because while it mentions his dead family, the events that happened right before this one are described thusly. Having returned to his vigilante mission in New York, the Punisher sulked, pretty sure you meant stalked there, Chief, the mistakenly accused of murder Khazar, Lord of the Savage Land. I'll assume there's a good reason why the Lord of the Savage Land was in New York and yet still not wearing a shirt, and just move on. After a brutal struggle on the rooftops of the city, Frank realized that Khazar was innocent and disappeared. And that's all the setup you need for this book. Bye! Anyway, back to our alley. It's become a kind of shrine now, visited by those who have fallen so low they cling to the last rung on the ladder of humanity. Ah yes, those who supported Universal's Dark Universe. A scarred woman named Lucy Mellis approaches the shrine in the alleyway. Like so many others, she's come to this place with an offering and a prayer. Yes, this offering of a picture of Teddy Roosevelt. We also see a 12-year-old in an apartment who overhears his mother getting beaten by his stepfather, who draws the Punisher logo into a window, also offering a prayer. And finally, a junkie resists the urge to attack a man on the street to get some money for a fix, who is approached by a dark figure with glowing red eyes and an equally glowing symbol on his forehead. Good boy, you get to walk away. This time. Man, tattoo salesmen are aggressive. We move over to a drug lab. They make death here. Then they give it to kids to sell to kids. How can anyone compete against such top-tier marketing strategies? The door to the lab is busted open, revealing the Punisher in a similar appearance to the cover. Not sure if one is directly based on the other, or if there was just a general sketch or layout used for one that inspired the two. Either way, it still looks good. But what's more important is that on the other page is an old advertisement for Pokemon back when they didn't know about the thing they were marketing and just assumed you caught Pokemon in giant nets. There's a moment when he enters a room. The tiniest sound seems to disappear. The moment passes the minute he speaks. You're not pizza. The weapons aren't like anything they've ever seen before. Probably because they look kinda silly. Not as bad as on the cover when they're glowing all angelic-like, but they still look way over-designed to be actual guns. He smells of earth and smoke. Nothing inspires confidence in your main character more than learning he hasn't showered. He starts killing the drug manufacturers, getting flashes of memories of a gun to his own head, and that something happened to him. Hell, he's not even sure where the weird guns came from. He just thinks of what he needs and pulls them out of his coat. Magic pockets, man! Love that game as a kid. Hell, my old jacket has something like that. Unfortunately for me, instead of guns, it just pulls out tricorders. Also, why do these people have a bazooka? I mean, not that it makes a difference against Frank, since he then gets a flamethrower from his coat. One of the drug makers makes a run for it as the flames start encompassing the entire lab. Frank pursues him. You idiot! What's wrong with you? We gotta get out of here or we're both gonna die!
Perfect! Then that's the way it shall be!
Frank just grabs the guy and throws him off the roof of the building, which, yeah, dude, probably should have fled out of the building instead of higher up. The building collapses amidst all the flames, and Frank Castle tumbles into hell. Sorry, that's another typo. He tumblers into hell. Frank has a collection of cat photo tumblers. Also a long-abandoned Onceler-esque blog. Firefighters soon arrive as Frank continues to have memories flash before him, though he still can't remember how he died. One of the firefighters notices him emerging from the blaze. I see it, but I'm gonna pretend I didn't. So Marvel's attitude towards this miniseries. Over to an abandoned, desanctified church where two figures are praying to God for forgiveness, when a demon appears along with some human agents called Stalkers to attack the two. One is captured, but the other, named Tariel, flees through a stained glass window and reveals himself to have wings that just appear out of nowhere. The demon laughs off the fleeing figure. He is Olivier. Once Prince of the Archangels, he sided with Lucifer in Heaven's only war. It's not the one you think. It was the war on drugs. Olivier then gives this guy mouth to mouth and sucks out his divine essence. Looks like angel, tastes like chicken. Ugh, sits in your stomach like expired ham though. Olivier recounts to no one in particular how even after being put in hell after the war with heaven, his fellow fallen still didn't like him. They ejected him from there, putting him in a human body and giving it red demon eyes because, as you can probably tell from his tastes like chicken remark, the dude is not exactly known for subtlety. He's been working on regaining his power and plans to overthrow the other lords of hell. We then cut over to Lucy Mellis again, this time being abused by her husband. However, the lights suddenly cut out and the Punisher arrives, beating the crap out of him and telling her that her prayer in the alley is answered, and if she wants to be free, this is her time. It's then that she recognizes him, not as the Punisher, but Frank Castiglione. She was the little sister of his best friend. He runs off back to the alley, where he's apparently just got himself a giant loaf of bread that he's munching on while staring at a cross. In the alley, Frank Castle rests. He thinks of Lucy, a girl who will always be 8 years old in his mind, which makes the fact that she's married really weird and uncomfortable for him. He sees an image of his wife and kids, following them up a fire escape until finally he reaches the roof and finds the wounded Tariel waiting for him. Tariel says that he and his fellow were Grigori, angels from the apocryphal books of Enoch. They were sent to watch over mankind, but then they liked the mortal life and defected to humanity, and lots of other stuff happened. But the point is that he warns Frank about Olivier and directs him to a club and a guy named Gadriel where he can get the answers he's seeking. And then he's suddenly on fire. This is insane. You're telling me? I don't even remember seeing him get injured. Apparently angels will just spontaneously combust if you breathe on them the wrong way. I never thought I would die alone. Or extra crispy. At the club, Frank quickly locates Gadriel and demands answers about what the hell happened to him. Gadriel admits that he was the one who brought Frank back to his current state, since otherwise he would have ended up in hell. However, he wasn't just a Grigori, but he was given a second chance as a guardian angel. And he screwed that up too. He admits that if he had been doing his job correctly, Frank's family wouldn't have been killed, thus why he decided to save Frank. Issue 1 ends with Frank aiming one of his weird-ass guns at the guy. Issue 2 picks up right where that left off. The people who frequent Milton's aren't your regular bar crowd. In private, they've seen and done things that would horrify most. They snort jello powder. Anyway, Frank shoots Gadriel, but the guy is unharmed. If you wanted me dead, I would be. Those weapons respond to the one who wields them. Well, in that case, I'm at least gonna shoot you in the crotch a few times. After a few more failed attempts at killing him, Gadriel explains that he was the one who resurrected Frank and gave him access to all the super heaven weapons. He's basically in a state of purgatory now. If Gadriel hadn't intervened, all the murders Frank had committed would have sent him straight to hell. However, before he can explain any more, he senses something and flies off, promising to talk with him more about it later. We cut over to the iconic Manhattan Flatiron Building, aka that triangular building you see in New York and a lot of stuff. Manhattan's Flatiron Building is a curiosity, an architectural oddity that fascinates and amuses New Yorkers and tourists alike. Yet the strange configuration of the building was not a lark on the part of its designer. The building itself is a dark locus, a focal point for arcane energy, a wedge between here and there. Wow, and here I thought the architect, Daniel Burnham, designed it because of the way those roads intersected, but apparently it was because of magic. So tell me, when he designed Union Station, was that also because it was a portal to hell? On that note, a figure in a trench coat walks down a hallway in the building, following the sound of Olivier singing, "I've Got You Under My Skin." Yes, it seems Olivier is living there, as we see him soaking in a tub of blood, and we see his surroundings are like an apartment. For the record, the Flatiron Building is an office building, so good job there. The guy Olivier is meeting is identified as Stalker, which I suppose could mean he's just one of his stalkers, but the art on him is rather inconsistent. When we see him in the hallway talking with a janitor, he has some kind of robo-chin to him, not unlike James Bond Jr.'s version of Jaws, but when he goes inside the apartment, he looks like a normal person, so what the hell? Anyway, Olivier brings him in and over to an easel. Don't mind me, Stalker. My muse is calling. I've been trying to figure out just what this painting needed for days. The answer, as with all things, is happy little clouds. Stalker reports that their hunt for angels like the one from before has proven entirely successful. We also see that Olivier's painting is of New York engulfed in flames. Do you think I need more red here? Ah well, maybe I'll take a break and think about it. Time to clean the brush. Just beat the devil out of it. Stalker also brings him a present. A head in a hat box.
Next time, punch holes in here for God's sake.
After drinking down some more divine essence, we flash back to Olivier's past when he regained his memory of being the fallen angel after having murdered someone. And that's it. Riveting. We cut over to Damon Hellstorm, formerly Hellstrom, the son of Satan, a character Moarte talked about on his Longbox show a while ago. He's pretty much just that, Satan's kid who rebelled and tries to do good while disrupting Hell's plans, though at this point he controls a realm of Hell too. He's being attacked by demons when Gadriel shows up to help him. Gadriel explains how Olivier plans to use the power taken from the angels to wage a final war over Hell and take it over, which seems like a really unnecessary thing when he's already got a sweet-ass apartment in New York, a blood tub, and his paintings that he could probably sell for a decent wage. And you know, when you take over Hell, you gotta drop the painting since all your free time is spent doing managerial stuff. Hell is micromanaging. The Punisher soon follows, one of his new powers being able to sense the supernatural. His guns also have the ability to kill demons, so the three of them fighting together. And it's here where I finally started figuring out the problem with this book. Up until this point, I didn't really see what people's issues were with this, since honestly it didn't really feel all that much different from other Punisher stories, except he had magic gun powers. But this? Fighting random demon minions? This is not the Punisher. Gadriel talking about some great threat from Olivier over hell realms and demons and crap, it's not compelling for a character like the Punisher. It just makes him no different than any other character that deals with supernatural shenanigans, like, say, Ghost Rider or DC's John Constantine, only with guns. To be perfectly frank, I don't think the Punisher being a reborn angel of vengeance is necessarily a bad idea for a story. You basically make him Marvel's answer to the Crow. But that does mean you still have to keep him in his usual wheelhouse. He should still be taking on criminals and evil people, maybe some forces with some magic at their disposal, but not demons and otherworldly invasions or crap like that. At that point, he's not the Punisher anymore. Anyway, after dealing with the demons, Hellstorm leaves to go deal with the demons no doubt attacking his realm. While Lucy Mellis continues to contemplate leaving her abusive husband, Olivier is informed about Gadriel and the Punisher stepping in to aid Hellstorm. In his anger, his painting gets set on fire. Well, don't worry, Olivier. We don't make mistakes, just happy accidents. He then opens up some kind of chasm in his apartment that swallows the two stalkers. With that big hole, I don't think you're gonna get the deposit back, Olivier. No, please, Master! It wasn't our fault! It's no fun unless I get to punish someone. It's a good thing he pointlessly did this to his minions, otherwise we might not know he was evil. It won't kill them, according to him, but it will torment them, so I guess he can't be that bad a boss? Still, might want to take this up with HR. Anyway, Frank fails to capture the fleeing stalkers and demons, but fortunately for them, Gadriel succeeded in getting one. However, the stalker recognizes him, claiming to be someone the Punisher killed at one point. Gadriel incinerates the stalker before they can say any more. Great interrogation, guys. You certainly learned a lot. Issue 2 ends with Frank suspicious of Gadriel after that, though I'm more suspicious of his oddly tiny hand. Issue 3 begins with Gadriel giving some more info about his past, how he used to be Heaven's weapons master, but lost the job when he taught humans how to make weapons. Between this, Metron, and the Monolith, it seems like humanity sucks at inventing weapons, which you would think would be the one thing we're really good at. Gadriel takes Frank to a house where a bunch of other former angels have gathered, but Frank just wants to know who the hell Olivier is. One of the angels says that they wouldn't need Gadriel or Frank if he had done his job and protected Frank's family like he was supposed to. Before Frank can force Gadriel to explain in more detail, some stalkers burst through a window. They were human once. They don't look human now. Bald people in sunglasses are not human. As Olivier continues his conquest of other hellish realms that apparently he's been doing for a while now, we learn even more of his backstory. He rose to become a powerful mafia head and used a ritual of some kind to start gaining power, but the kind of power he needed would have to come from an endless supply of blood and fear. And a tool to create that blood and fear, as we see an image of Frank Castle back during his wartime days. And then it's over to Lucy Mellis as she visits Frank's grave. I need to talk to you, Frank, and I didn't know where else to go. I'm suing you for the hospital bill for my husband's injuries. She says that Frank was the one who originally taught her to be strong and never settle for second best, and feels she's fallen so far since then. And enough of that scene, back to the fight, where some new guy appears. Hello, Castle. Long time no see. I know you. You ought to. You killed me! Trust me, that doesn't make you special. I've killed a lot of people in my time. I mean, I've even died now, and I'm still killing people. I really have no other point to my existence. He tosses some kind of flaming axe that explodes, I guess, which knocks them all down. The guy says that all the stalkers in Olivier's employ are people who died at Frank's hands. After he's knocked unconscious, we learn through flashbacks that Frank actually shot himself in the head before Gadriel made him rise from his grave. Go then, Punisher. When the time is right, you'll find me. And now is not that right time because... Well, I'm gonna go to that bar you found me in. I'm punished to live as a human, so booze it is! The flashback brings him to one of his safe houses where he stored weapons and clothes. I know this place. I know these things. I know who I am. I'm a cosplayer! Both Frank and Gadriel come to, held in some kind of red organic wall. The other former angels are dead. Frank wonders why he and the other angels didn't try to stop Olivier before he started the scheme to use their divine essence to power his conquest. He didn't come after us until quite recently. He didn't need us before. He had you. Frank Castle, the original Energizer Bunny. Olivier comes in, revealing that he's kept Frank alive because he wants to know how he's back from the dead. Wait. What's that scent? Do I detect the sweet bouquet of angel? Aw, Frank, you got me angel's trumpet flowers! Olivier transforms back into his human form, revealing himself as Mafia boss Frank Costa, to the confusion of the Punisher. Frank Costa was the mobster who was partially responsible for the death of the Punisher's family, and issue 3 ends with Olivier revealing that he did it deliberately to create the Punisher. So, settle in for some retcons, folks. In our final issue, Olivier exposits that the entire event where Frank Castle's family was killed was staged by him, a ritual to force Frank into becoming the Punisher. He then had the Punisher kill him so his soul would then return to hell as part of his plan. Except this is kind of bullcrap. I looked it up. The Punisher didn't actually kill Frank Costa. A mob assassin got to him before he could. But then again, this comic is playing fast and loose with the retcons, so why not at this point? So, why did the Punisher need to kill so many people? Well, turns out every single person the Punisher killed became a new servant of Olivier, ready to become an army to fight for him in hell. And why did Frank commit suicide? Well, since Olivier didn't need him anymore, he had some demons whisper in his ear and convinced him to do the job. Gadriel admits his negligence in partying it up on Earth instead of helping Frank's family, and further not being there when the demons convinced him to kill himself. He hoped that putting Frank on the path to redemption might help himself in the eyes of heaven too. Well now! This is all bullcrap! Like I said, the idea of the Punisher being a supernatural agent of vengeance isn't a bad idea, But this revelation is horse crap. It's one thing to try to relaunch the character with a new dynamic, but it's entirely different to completely alter the context of his origin. The Punisher is a guy who kills criminals, not the pawn of some demon in a convoluted scheme to take over hell. This not only fundamentally alters the nature of the character so that he has always been associated with the supernatural instead of normal human crime, but you basically said that every single Punisher story before this one has been meaningless in his fight to destroy crime since he's been unintentionally helping the forces of evil this entire time! This is Clone Saga levels of giving the middle finger to your audience. And look, I'm not particularly fond of the Punisher or his kill-crazy methodology, but saying that the last 20 years of stories were actually Frank helping the bad guys is pretty disrespectful to the previous stories, creators, and the fans who followed the character. And all to service a story that isn't that great to begin with. But I suppose we should move on from here since we're only halfway through the 4th issue. Olivier asks Frank who he hates more, heaven or hell, for how they've jerked him around, but he manages to break free of the wall and says he's not gonna be anyone's pawn anymore. You've both forged this weapon. Now it's gonna kill you! And geez, he pulls out a friggin' chain gun from his jacket. Suddenly this is less a Punisher comic and more a Doom comic. Rip and tear, Frank! Both Frank and Gadriel fight the Stalkers, with it coming down to Gadriel fighting Olivier while Frank fights this Cenobite reject identified as Olivier's human brother Bruno Costa, another character involved in the Punisher's origins. And now he's running around with no pants on and a bunch of random pieces of metal in his head. He summons the Hell Axe while, for whatever reason, Frank pulls out a sword. Because truly, if the Punisher is known for anything, it's his fencing skills. The two weapons connect, one made from heaven and one from hell, and for whatever reason, the clash somehow opens up some kind of giant dimensional portal. Bruno gets tossed out of the building, I guess, and Frank uses a gun to shoot Olivier closer to the portal. The portal is a gateway to hell, which suddenly has a bunch of tentacles emerge from it that grab Olivier and drag him back into it. The tentacles emerge again to grab Frank, but Gadriel comes closer to him, the angelic power repelling the demonic tendrils. He says it's high time he acted like an angel, and tosses himself at the tentacles to fight them, which apparently transforms his body into some kind of weird, super deformed version of itself, because yeesh, these proportions. He uses what remains of his angelic essence to close the portal, Frank finally forgiving Gadriel for his failure to help his family. Admittedly, I wish I could have shot you a few more times before I did that, but hey, that's life, death, zombification, whatever I am. The story winds down as Damon Hellstrom and Doctor Strange comment on the events, but we then see the Punisher helping people out, particularly with Lucy being encouraged to get a restraining order on her abusive husband. He's a demon to some, an angel to others. Oh, come on, I was joking about the Cenobites before. Is it gonna turn out that that Atkins Cenobite was the Punisher all along? And so our comic ends with the Punisher confronting a gang getting ready to shoot some kids. It used to be about vengeance, but vengeance is selfish. Oh, yeah, sure, that's the problem with it. All that death, all that blood. In the end, it was really for him. The first half of this issue establishes that it wasn't for him. It was for a demon. His motivations didn't really matter. With all that weighing on his soul, he'd never see his family again. It used to be about vengeance. Now it's about something else entirely. Redemption. No, I know what it's about. It's about 2 years later when Garth Ennis tried this again, and in some narration, completely undid this entire miniseries. On that note, these comics suck. In isolation, they're fine. The artwork is, for the most part, competent, and if this was about some original character starting a supernatural vengeance quest for redemption, it'd be okay. The problem is that it tries to completely undo the nature of the character, retconning every single story where he kills someone into some overly complex master plan by a demon to conquer hell. Said conquest, by the way, we barely see anything of, so we just take his word for it that it's happening. It's not the fact that he's an avenging angel that's the issue. It's the complete retcon of his past that's stupid. Hell, it's not made any better by this conclusion that seems to try to say that he's fighting now to get into heaven and see his family again, that he's on a quest for redemption for all the people he's murdered. The thing is, He's not doing anything differently. He's still shooting and killing people. Except now he's doing it with magic guns. Where'd he purchase those? Next time, as we prepare for the 500th episode in 2 weeks, we take things easy with another Comic Book Quickies. It used to be about vengeance, but vengeance is selfish. Frank, if you're bringing that vengeance in here, you'd better have enough to share with everybody.